So, welcome to the workshop, our workshop, Advocating with Ready Plus. Um, Again, I'm Alice, the lead community outreach and development coordinator. And that workshop was created with the help of our equity access clinician, Ruby Alguire. So, today we really are going to talk about how to better support all communities really in the work that you do, whether you're a professional, you are a volunteer, you are just a community supporter, whatever role you have to support someone who might have different challenges, different needs within a different context, then I think advocating with Ready Plus is going to be very helpful. So, what to expect for that workshop? Today, we're going to try to help you to gain some clarity, how to have a better understanding of the context, have a better understanding of what you need to know, what you need to consider. We're also going to help you to be more effective, find ways and practical strategies to develop tools and skills, or even perspective that will help you be more efficient. And hopefully, with everything we share with you, you will be more confident in the fact that you can build good practice and you can find ways to be more efficient within the role that you want to have and the impact that you intend to have. So, if you already watched the Ready Plus introduction part and you understand what Ready Plus is and you have a good understanding of the work that we have and the goal that we are trying to achieve, then let's start, shall we? So if you understand what Ready Plus is, then you might ask, what is Ready Plus advocacy? Well, Ready Plus advocacy is understanding what intersectionality is really, and how it impacts people's lived experience, and how it impacts the way you go through life. It impacts the way you interact with people. It also impacts, your existence, who you are, your trajectory in life, what you have access and not access to, what makes your life what it is based on all the identities that you hold. And why is it so important? There's a reason why I'm leading the Ready Plus project. It's because intersectionality, it is my daily life. This is my experience. It is being aware of how the fact that we're different can be amazing. It can bring a lot of joy, a lot of open-mindedness, a lot of different way of seeing life, and bringing just a very interesting perspective on life. It's also a way to experience a lot of challenges and barriers, and just think that makes life a little more difficult, a little harder, because you're not part of the norm. And often structures and organization and most of the world, it's based on a norm. And when you don't fit in, it's always a bit harder. So imagine, you don't really have to imagine because I told you this is my life. So this is based on one of my children. So imagine a kid that is, let's call that kid Jazz. Jazz identify as non-binary. They're Black, so they have a visible identity. Then they have a disability that's visible, where hearing aid, for example, but there's others that are visible disability. Also hidden disability that you cannot actually see. That kid is also neurodivergent, so processes the world around them differently. As a queer family, so our queer spawn speaks a language that's not dominant. So here, for example, it's French. He's considered from a vulnerable community, has some learning disabilities, behavioral issues, and other different identities that make them unique, wonderful, but also makes life a little more challenging. That kid advocating for a family, advocating for a child like this means that you need to understand what those identities are, but also what is the impact on the work that you're trying to do, the way you need to support them. They will need a very specific way to be supported. Because of course, it's a good illustration of the level of advocacy capacity you need to better support that child. If you enter a room to support them and you don't understand how they identify, you're not going to be able to support them the way they need to. If you don't make sure that you don't have the language skills, also you won't be able to support. If you don't understand what it means to be Black and how to face what it is to face racism, if you're not like a basic understanding, then you're not gonna offer advocacy that's gonna really take into account their reality, and so therefore be very efficient. So it's important for you to understand that complexity, understand why it's important to have a good understanding of it. Why? Because as an advocate, you will face people who, when they see that complexity, when they don't understand all of it, and it feels overwhelming, and you don't interact with someone who is able to help decipher the situation, better understand the situation, then you will face a lot of negative reaction. Unfortunately, people become very uncooperative because it feels like it's too complicated to solve, or that person is too difficult to accommodate, help, support. You might face some inappropriate comments, and you need to be ready to respond to those comments. Basically, systems are not exception friendly. Let's leave it at that. So you need to be a good advocate. You need to be comfortable with the complexity of multi-layered identity. Because you can face things like that are just even sometimes illogical. I know that for my family, it means having to follow rules that is easy to apply for everybody, but it's very tough for us to follow. One example that I have is that we were able to go to a camp, a really fun camp. Like it's a beautiful place with a lot of little bungalows, and there's activity. It's fun. It's for families that had kids who had a serious disease. So we were really happy to go, and we were going to have a good time. But we have 6 children, and one of them is over 18. And the rule is 2 adults. We can only bring 2 adults. But our younger kids have special needs. And, there's 6 kids, 5 that we were going to bring, plus 2 adults. So having our eldest would have been a lot easier. And usually it works better. So we asked, can we bring an extra adult? Because we need the support, we need the help, and we don't have enough help anyway. And they were like, no, it's only 2 adults. And we were trying to tell them, yes, but if you're based on 2 parents, 2 kids, it's easy. But 2 parents, 6 kids, well, 5 if we don't bring the eldest, but 5 kids, 3 with special needs, that rule does not impact us the same way. And we had to advocate and explain to the point where we were like, it's not that camp is not accessible to us. We cannot just come and have fun if those are the conditions that we are welcome. And so they changed the rule, but it took a lot of effort and work just to try and make them understand that equality doesn't work. Equity is what you should strive for, because this is how we better advocate for people to be included. So that's why advocacy is important. You need to understand the complexity. You need to be comfortable with complexity. That's number 1. Then to be a good advocate, you need to embrace some of aspects of inclusion to make sure that the society is more inclusive. So you do need to embark on other side quests, if you can call that. We're not going to teach you anything about this, but you need to be aware that to start doing that, where you need to commit to be also a supporter of systemic changes. So you do need to understand systemic racism and oppression, what it means, that it's about dismantling system and structure and ideology that are perpetuating racial inequities and injustice. So you need to commit to that because to use intersectionality to analyze, to try and understand systems and structure, is to be able to understand how to deconstruct the system. So you do need to commit to that. You also need to commit to anti-racism and anti-oppression work because you want to eliminate racial and systemic discrimination, and you want to promote equity. So, for example, you need to understand the historical context of the work that you want to do. And then, of course, you need to understand that there's always an imbalance in power. And you need to acknowledge that because if you advocate for someone and you're facing a system, then you need to realize that you might be against powerful forces that are applying even more pressure on people who are marginalized, on under or strictly underserved communities. And so your power, because their power, needs to be a counterforce for this, and you need to be aware of that. Because sometimes they can be, those power struggle can be very obvious, but sometimes they can be a very subtle. And that's why you need to have a better awareness. Like that's why you need to build that understanding of the environment. And, Ready Plus is there to help you address that inequity in the world. Because through what we teach you, we hope to enhance access to resources, really. And we want you to be intentional in the way you learn and what you learn. And, knowledge is power. So once you understand that you need to be comfortable with complexity, that you have to ground your work within systems and a bigger picture to understand that there are forces, that there are bigger things that you will have to encounter, face, and understand. Then you have to start in building understanding around what it is that those communities that you're trying to support are facing. Of course, Ready Plus is not specifically for underserved communities, to serve underserved communities, but it is important to start by including the one who were excluded for the longest and the most. And it is historically underserved communities. And what those people can bring into the space when you are trying to support them and advocate for them is identity-based wounds. It's those invisible wounds, those wounds that are ignored, and that those wounds will have very deep roots. This is the unseen part of advocacy that you need to be more aware of, because not everybody shows pain the same way, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. And what we call identity-based wounds are wounds that people sustain from racism through both interpersonal or systemic racism. So what happens with in that situation, if you are advocating for someone who might be a carrier of that wound, is you need to bring a healing intention into the space. You need to understand that healing is not the end of the journey. It's really part of the journey. And everything that you do would be to acknowledge and help support and validate that wound that people bring into the space, so that wound doesn't hurt and gets in the way of the work that you want to do with them. So like that quote that we chose says, like, healing doesn't just happen at the end, but throughout the process, giving them the gift of being seen and heard. That is one of the deepest, most important role of an advocate, making sure that people feel seen and heard. So another quote that we've decided to include is one that try and remind people that it doesn't have to be big to be important. It doesn't have to, the experiences of racism that child or caregiver has experienced does not have to meet a criteria of trauma in order to be something that should be acknowledged or addressed. So just being aware of that fact helps you better advocate for example, for Black and Indigenous communities by acknowledging just the fear that they carry. So now that you've learned that you need, to be comfortable with complexity, that you need to connect your intentions to a bigger picture, that there's things that people will bring to the space that you won't see, you might not see. So you need to be aware that they might be there so you don't cause more harm or trouble or whatever it is that you can do that will make the pain worse. With identity-based, when understanding that concept. So now that you know that you're facing someone that you're ready to understand, you think you're ready to understand because you have an awareness of their reality. You're starting to build an awareness around what might be needed from you. You know where you need to be. You understand the level of understanding that you might need. Learning more about people, different identities, the impact of being Black, for example, the impact of being queer or being disabled. This is knowledge that you need to work on, and so that you know that you need to connect. To expect things that you might not be aware of. But let's talk about yourself. Let's talk about what you need to work on you as a person. And you doesn't mean that you're not part of an historically underserved group. Absolutely not. If you are a human being, this teaching is still for you, because we are all equal in some capacity with this. It's how do we react to things that are different, things that makes us uncomfortable, things that are new and we're not sure about, things that are triggering for us, like all of those things that require us to be a bit more open-minded and flexible. And we are not ready to be open and flexible to everything. That's impossible. And sometimes it's even not necessarily a good thing. But when you want to do it, when you identify something that's important for you, that's a value for you, but then you have a reaction that feels that doesn't align with that value, you also need to make sure you learn from that. And so it is about what we can call questionable reactions. Questionable reaction, that's those reactions that seems like they don't align with who you think you are or who you want to be. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make is judging themselves when these reactions arise. Because this is not who they want to be. This is not who they think they would be. There's always this question as to what would I do if something happens, like who I really am when, there is, I don't know, something racist happening, or I'm being called out for doing something that's discriminatory against someone or doing something wrong. And then your reaction tells you a lot about yourself. And sometimes you are pleasantly surprised, and sometimes, you are not pleasantly surprised. The problem is these questionable reactions get in the way of being efficient and creating change using the right type of advocacy. And when you want to be a good advocate, you cannot let your emotion lead the work. That's just a big no. Let's just leave it. Let's just be clear about that. You cannot at any point let your emotion lead the conversation, the situation, because being an advocate means making space for the other person or the other group that you want to support. And if you take space, that means you're taking the lead from that person or that group. That means you were asked to fill that space in a certain way. So you're not leading, you're being led. So working on those reactions is very crucial because they are unhelpful in many different ways. And you can't underestimate how much they can be counterintuitive and not constructive to the work that you want to do. For example, like defensiveness. People who are defensive when something happens tend to deny or minimize or feel personally attacked or ashamed by a situation. And what happens with that reaction is that it hinders the possibility of a productive dialogue. Like it makes it less likely that people would be open to have a conversation and talk. Because when you're on the defensive, then you feel attacked. So all of a sudden you shut down. And to better support someone, to better understand someone, you need to be able to build a dialogue. So defensiveness will definitely build a wall between you and other people. One example is what we call white fragility. White fragility is the typical reaction that we'll describe when, for example, someone white will say something offensive to someone black. That black person just tell the white person, like, you were very racist. And then because of the defensiveness, that person feels attacked and very emotional. And then that was emotion, like that emotional state is centered. And that's all that matters right now. It's how that person who hurt someone else feels, and that's what is important at the moment. And then it's just gets in the way of any type of dialogue being possible because you can't even address what just happened. So that's one way that defensiveness would get in the way of the work that needs to be done. There's also guilt and shame. Guilt and shame makes you feel very overwhelmed, and then you have a tendency to avoid or withdraw situation and from the conversation there. And it's a very paralyzing feeling that will like stop any meaningful action to repair the harm that was done. When you sit in guilt and shame, for example, something that we call performative allyship, happen. It's when you feel like you need to do something, but you don't take time to see if it's meaningful or really impactful. You just need to do something now to make you feel better. So it's posting online, for example, posting on Facebook about a topic. And then you think, oh, okay, I've done my part. I feel better. But your goal was just to make you feel less guilt and shame, not really acting on something. So it prevents you from doing something meaningful, having a meaningful impact on the situation. So guilt and shame need to make sure if they take center, that's what happens. You just want to act quickly. There's also anger and resentment, of course. Those are pretty self-explanatory, but now it's kind of reversed. Like it's one of those emotions that kind of flips the script because then you feel that there's an injustice that is done towards you. You feel kind of attacked because your privileges are threatened. You feel like you are actually the victim and exposed to something that's hostile type of. And so you're going to be hostile too, and you're going to be confrontational. And you're going to want to fight back, even if no one is really attacking you. Which means that now, like, nothing is possible. What are you going to defend? What are you going to, not going to advocate for change or be constructive if you're stuck in anger and resentment, because this is your attack mode. And it can, like, for example, something like reverse racism was developed around and centers anger and resentment. So also you want to avoid, you want to question that reaction and see what it leads to. There's also frustration and helplessness. Frustration and helplessness is particularly unhelpful for exactly one of the reasons why READI Plus exists in the first place, to be honest. It's because the feeling that nothing is possible, there's a resistance to the work. You don't make any progress. Things are not changing, and it feels like a lot. Then it can lead to burnout, and people are starting to be disengaged. This is kind of the apathy that we see in the world, like post George Floyd, really, the DEI kind of work. People were taking training, and training are not necessarily efficient enough. And so people are getting tired and fatigued, and they're kind of giving up. And it's pretty obvious why it's not helping, like that aspect, holding those emotions aren't helping, because it's not giving you hope that things will change, and you're just going to give up. So it's hard to create change when you do nothing, for sure. Then fear and anxiety, those are very common. I think those are the ones that we see a lot, and those are the ones that people acknowledge a lot less. It's easy to realize you feel shame and guilt. It's easy to feel defensiveness. It's kind of easy to feel anger and resentment. People are able to understand and realize how they feel. But fear and anxiety are easier to hide, really. And so it's harder to question. And it's also because you're worried about the repercussion, the backlash, how people will react, what people would think, like what is going on with that aspect. Like, what if I say something? What if I go somewhere? So it puts you in a state where you're kind of frozen. And so yeah, you're stuck. It's a feeling of being stuck. And you center the wrong thing because your goal is really to soothe your fear and your anxiety. Everything that you do is not to feel that way. So you can actually make big mistake when you do that, because you will do whatever feels right, and maybe what you feel right is wrong. A concept like white saviorism centers white people want to save other, like marginalized community, for example, just because they need to feel that they are in control and they are the good person, and they are disempowering another person and taking the space, taking the lead, taking the attention away from the real problem, the real issue. And of course, there's apathy and indifference. This is the most pervasive example, in my opinion, of all the reaction that you can have, because you kind of put your energy into maintaining the status quo, because it's not great, but at least it could be worse. And actually, there's good aspect of it. So let's not change anything. Let's not do anything. It's that concept of colorblindness that is actually very negative, because if you don't know what a racialized person is going through, what's difficult for them in their life, what's complicated, then how do you support them? How do you change the reality? How do you make things better? You don't really, because if you don't see the struggle, then you cannot be part of the solution. So those are the reactions that you need to be on the lookout for, really, because you want to make sure that you don't judge yourself. You welcome your perspective, your reaction, but you remind yourself that they are not constructive reactions. They're normal. They will happen, but they will get in the way of the work that you want to do. So you need to know how to recognize them and what to do to not stay in them. So not just being aware of what it leads and how it gets in the way of your work. You need to know how do I make things different? How do I make things better? How do noticing about this will change? Well, for that, you need to kind of tune in. You need to know how it feels. You need to be connected. So ask yourself, how does it feel in the body when I feel that way? Like that reaction that I'm not okay with, that reaction that I don't like, that I had. How does it feel? Where is it located? How does it sit with me? What specific emotion are coming up? What are the emotions that are rising the most when I'm facing, for example, discrimination, when I see someone being discriminated against, or something that makes sense? What does come up the most? What do I need to work on? And what are those emotions telling me to do? Are they telling me to do something that's constructive, or are they getting in a way of doing the work that I want to do? What do they teach me? Really just interrogate and sit with those feelings to make sure that they are showing you the right way, because they give you important information. And you want to make sure that you show up in a way that makes you proud. You want to make sure you show up in a way that aligns with your values. And you want to meet people with self-compassion. You want to meet yourself with self-compassion. And you want to be able to be compassionate and find that balance, as opposed to just judging someone. What can also help with those reactions? One thing that we teach with READI Plus is, like I said in another part of the workshop, is practical empathy is one of the principles of the READI Plus project. And here we had it restorative, because we want to add this healing intention as an advocate. You really need to bring that into the space, and that's very important. And those are little tips that will help you build a better way to do empathy. Because there's, if you remember, there's empathy and there's practical empathy. What do I do with that empathy? And we thought that those 3 tips are the one who makes you build the healthier type of empathy that will be actually useful. So the tip number 1 is practice. It seems pretty obvious, but it is not, because I speak multiple languages. And the number one mistake that people make is not take every opportunity possible to practice. They always wait to be the best, or to be very confident, or to be able to have conversation. But that means that from the moment they start learning until the moment they feel comfortable using the language, they missed all that time to practice. So practice empathy. Don't wait until you feel comfortable and you feel like you have a best understanding of what empathy is, and you are the incarnation of the most empathic people. Sometimes you are born with it, sometimes you aren't, but you need to practice. So take every opportunity to try and put yourself in other people's shoes. But tip number 2, you cannot do that unless you know yourself. How are you going to be good at being in someone else's shoes if you don't even know what it feels to be in your own shoes? You can't. So you need to be comfortable in your own shoes first. You need to learn, you need to know more about yourself. You need to build empathy towards yourself, self-empathy. You need to practice with yourself first. So make sure you're comfortable in your own shoes before. And then tip number 3, remember that when it comes to empathy and therefore emotions, there's a lot of common ground that we have. Maybe you're trying to support or advocate for someone that you have very little in common, but you always do have something in common. Maybe you don't know what it is to fear to be discriminated against, but you know what it is to fear something. Maybe you don't know what it is to not feel welcome for the color of your skin, but maybe you feel unwelcome somewhere for other reason. And that emotional connection is there. That emotion, experiencing those emotions, you have that in common with other people. And you can actually lean into that common understanding, that common ground that is being a human being, the human experience. So to make sure that you're building the good way to be empathic to others, those are the basic 3 tips that we will invite you to practice. Just take any opportunity to practice, be good in your own shoes, and remember that you have more in common with people than you think, and that's your strength. Then, more than just practical empathy, you need to know who you want to be, the person you need to bring into the space. I think advocacy is about having a clear understanding of who you need to be to support someone. So I created a little tip sheet for you to remember what's important and who you should be. It's kind of being a super advocate, a superhero, and this is how you do it, according to me and to the READI Pulse project. So I see you as a good supporter. You're a supporter. You're someone that wants to support someone. Whatever your role is, it doesn't really matter. You just need to have a clear vision of who you need to bring into the space. Number 1, you need to be a follower. You need to respect the autonomy of the person you want to support, and you need to take your instruction from that person. They need to lead the work. They are the experts. They know what they need. You're here to help. Even if it means taking the lead, it's because you were asked. You ask the right questions and you show up the way it's needed. Be a good follower. Also, be a good space maker. You need to make sure that you are able to welcome people as they are. You are able to understand people for who they are. So you need to cultivate that mental flexibility of not being judgmental, of being able to be open, to interrogate your own assumptions, being someone that is able to make space. You cannot take space. You need to make space. So you need to be a good space maker. Then you need to be a good bystander. I know that bystander can mean that I'm looking at something and I'm letting things happen. Well, you are here to reclaim that status. You're here to reclaim and to shift things. You are a bystander that wants to act. And so you need to learn how to react. What do I do when I think things happening? How do I react? What do I say? What are the most efficient way to address things? You need to be prepared to do that. There's interesting actually training where we're teaching bystanders to react to situation, especially when it comes to discrimination or violence or a lot of different things that you don't want to be a witness and do nothing. You want to be a good bystander. So, something like choose your words or having de-escalation training also. Then be a good practitioner. Develop the right skills. So practice Ready Plus principles. Use Ready Plus the way that it's intended to, which is helping just support your work and developing those skills or just practices. It will be very helpful for you to become just a better supporter. So now you know who you need to bring into the space. What you need to work on. Now let's try and actually use those skills with a case study. So for now, with that advocating with Ready Plus workshop, we saw that to be a good advocate, you need to be comfortable with complexity. You need to remind yourself that you're connected to something bigger. You also learn that you need to interrogate and be on the lookout for your reaction, because they will teach you something about you, but it will also get in the way of what you want to do. But also other people's reaction will have the same effect. So you need to make sure you really understand how those reactions get in the way and how to mitigate with them. So if you are aware of, that reaction creating this, you want to make sure you are the opposite force to that. And how you need to really question yourself and others so you can be more constructive. We showed you a little bit of how to use one of their principles, which is practical empathy, really restorative practical empathy. 3 tips that hopefully you will work on, because those are amazing and will help you. But most importantly, we talked about who you need to be. An advocate is a role. And to be a good advocate, you need to have a clear vision of who you need to bring into the space, or who you need to be. You need to bring you as you are, but there's a lot of you that might not be relevant depending on what's needed in the situation or in the context. So we taught you about how to be a good supporter. Now, knowing all of this, those basic tips really to be a good advocate, let's try and use it with a case study. So imagine that you are supporting a Black mom. Her name is Natasha. She's a single mother raising a son. Her son name is Caleb. He's 15. He's also Black. And lately, they've been going through a lot of challenges. Caleb is not doing well mentally. He's being diagnosed with general anxiety. There's a lot of unstable moods that are happening. It can be a little aggressive with his mother. He hasn't been going to school, and Natasha has been trying to talk with the principal and find solution. And is always interacting with people who are not understanding or judging, and they seem not even surprised that Caleb is behaving that way, considering like a situation or the people he's hanging out with. So not a lot of positive support. There's interaction with of course, the education system, as we said, but Natasha is worried that her son could interact with the child welfare system or even the justice system. So there's a lot of instability. And Natasha needs some support. But, you are an advocate. You're a supporter. You might be a friend, an auntie, a teacher in the school, like whoever you are, that mom needs support. They need someone to advocate with them. And you want to be that person. So you need to bring everything that we taught you today. You need to have that vision. What makes Natasha experience specific? What are the identities that are at play that could have an impact? The fact that she's Black has an impact. The fact that she's a single mom has an impact. The fact that, is there a community around or not? There's a lot of things that you need to consider in order to better support. Because when you ignore part of someone's identity, then you don't offer the support that they need, because you don't necessarily understand their needs. So understand that complexity. Go and look and try and have as much information as you can. Then you are interacting with the system. Identify the system that you're interacting with and understand the history and the impact of how they function based on that personal identity. Statistically, there's more cases that are brought to CAS about the Black community, when statistically they are not more likely to be neglectful, abusive with children. The only reason why they are overrepresented in the system is because of systemic racism and the way people treat them. So you need to be aware of that interaction with system. That is also very important. Then you're going to use what we are shared with you about identity wounds. Um, she is probably afraid. She's carrying things that you cannot see because this is not your experience. So you need to understand that those wounds are there. And when they show up, when they manifest, you need to advocate in a way that makes her feel safe and seen and heard. Remember, give her that gift of being seen and heard. Then be on the lookout for your own reaction to things. So what she shares, how you react to it. But remember, you are an advocate. So your emotion cannot lead the work. That means that maybe you will have reaction to how people you are advocating, like you're advocating for her, and you're going to face people that might behave in a way that is very offensive, that is very hurtful, that is inappropriate. If you let your emotion dictate the situation, you will not be constructive because you might take up some space. And you remember, you need to be a space maker. And to be a space maker, you need to be an emotional controller, but not in a negative way, in a positive way in that situation. So be aware of people's reactions and don't treat them don't be confrontational. That's not the goal. The goal is to understand that those reactions are normal. They will show up. They will get in a way in that way, and then you need to be aware to act and be a counter force to those reactions. So making them from being negative and not constructive to becoming force for change. Then you're going to use. Before even advocating for Natasha and Caleb, you would have worked on your tip for empathy before that, of course. So you'll be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You'll be comfortable in your own. So you will be able to use empathy to be a protective and a positive person, a presence in the situation. So good for you. You have good empathy. You did your job well. And now the person that you bring into the space will be a good supporter. And a good supporter is, if you remember it correctly, is a follower. You're going to follow their leads. You're going to be a space maker. You're not going to let your reaction lead. You're not going to let what you want lead. You're going to leave space for the person you are trying to support. You're going to be a good bystander, which means that, you're going to sit and watch, and you're going to intervene whenever it's necessary, it's relevant, and it's constructive. For the rest of the time, if you need to listen and still there's some meeting that you might have just to sit and listen. Just your presence will be enough. You can be that. But also there's a moment where you're a bystander that needs to intervene and step in. And last but not least, you're going to be a good READI Plus practitioner. You're going to use the tool that we're teaching you, where you're going to practice on the little things that you think is helpful. Here, we give you tips for practical empathy, but in other workshops, we give you other tips, other skills that you can develop that kind of be very useful, that you can use to advocate, and you can use to be a better advocate. So you know what Natasha and Caleb are facing. In that situation, what does READI Plus advocacy look like for this family? So we went through what we taught you, but very specifically what it is. What do you do? What do you do next? Of course, you're going to use cultural humility. It's one of the pillar and the one of the most foundational principle of the READI Plus project. You're going to be compassionate with your self-reflection. You're going to reflect on what you do know. You're going to make sure that you pull from your own personal experience, like what is it to be, what do you know about being a Black mother, a Black parent, for example, being a woman, being a Black person, being a single mom. Like, you're going to integrate and reflect on all the things that you know and that you can relate to. This is part of your empathy. You also make sure you're going to be aware of the things that you don't know and how to get that information. Do I get that information from the person that I'm trying to support? Do I need to get in touch with other person who have that knowledge? Do I need to another community organization? Like, how do I make sure that I have a clearer picture of what's needed here for that specific situation? It is important, again, that your reaction, like your lack of confidence, because you cannot be completely confident, doesn't make you make a decision that it will be counterintuitive or counterproductive. You want to make sure you do the right thing. So sometimes even acknowledging that you don't know enough doesn't mean that you're not the right person. You can be the right person. It depends on if there's a connection. If the connection is still there, you might still be the good person. You just need to fill some gaps in knowledge, for example. And there's a way for you to teach that, to learn that. So you need to be open and be receptive to new information. You need to be able to receive new information and to be adaptable. We actually teach you how to do that in another workshop, the one about Ready Plus Space. So go check that out if you get. Have people around you that will hold you accountable. This is one of the key things of being a good advocate. There's self-reflection, but you need to have people that you trust that will hold you accountable if ever you make a mistake or you're not sure of something, or you want to improve on something, but you're not sure you're capable of being vulnerable with someone. You need to identify those people who will hold you accountable to what you do, to grow and to improve yourself. It is crucial to have those people around if you want to do this work of being a good supporter well. So use cultural humility to know where you sit, to place you in the situation, and to make sure you have the right information. So now you are like with a single mom of a Black child. So what do you know about the Black community? What do you know about being Black within the education system, for example, that they have a higher rate of being excluded, for example, when there's no correlation with how Black children behave, for example. Black parents are less likely to be taken seriously because they're underestimated. That happens also at a systemic level. All of that will help you really become the best advocate possible for this family. But of course, this is just step one. Then you're going to use some basic principle of trauma-informed advocacy, because now that you know that you're supporting someone who has multi-layer identity, they have different aspects of their identity that impact the way they interact with system and the type of support that they need. So you're going to take into account that there's things that are going to be necessary to achieve to have the full picture and the full palette of support that you can offer. So you need to make sure you focus on building specific things like safety, trust, give them a choice, focusing on collaboration, empowerment, power sharing, cultural humility. Those are concepts that are important just for the person to feel heard and seen. You will need to focus on those goals. For here, we're going to choose two different ones. We're going to focus on safety and trust, and choice and collaboration. Because here, clearly, the interaction were negative. Natasha was not taking it seriously. There's a tension there. And therefore, she feels unsafe in the space that she needs to navigate. So you turn to safety and trust. You're going to focus on that based on the situation. You're going to see also that she feels disempowered, that she doesn't have control over the situation. So you're going to focus on choice and collaboration by trying to build that relation where something constructive and positive can be built. So first, let's focus on safety and trust. How long do you know Natasha? Do you know her well? Have you worked with her before? What is the level of trust and safety that already exists? Because you need to lean into that a feeling of safety and trust, because that's going to be key for the situation, for Natasha to feel that she can do something. You're going to focus on making sure you don't show any judgment, you don't make any assumption, you stay compassionate. So you really listen and you try into either not judge or also just interrogate why you would make those assumptions. Not necessarily condemn yourself, but welcome and interrogate so you become more aware of where you stand in that situation. Really lean into the relationship if already exists, or use your own skills. What are you good at? Like, what do you use to build positive connection with people? And we all do that differently, but if you know you're good at doing it in one way, like lean into that, really lean into relationship building. And be open as to what's to come and how you do things. Have a very clear, open communication so they know what's going on. They don't have to be blindsided. They don't have to guess. There's no room for interpretation. You are very clear in your communication. A clear line of communication is very, very powerful. One of the most powerful tools you have. I don't know if you know, but conflicts are often like born in misunderstanding. I know if you have kids, but if you do, you probably understand better than anyone. If you do feel like that safety and trust cannot be built with you, by you, then reach out to organization that you might know that might support the work, might do the work with you, or might do it instead of you if that's something that you really feel not comfortable. Sometimes we don't feel comfortable, but you need to make the difference between am I the best person to help, or am I just not equipped? Because sometimes you think you're not the best person because you're not equipped, but you can become more equipped. It's up to you to realize that sometimes it's not because you are worried to mess up that you're the wrong person. Maybe you're the right person. You just need to be the person that won't mess up by being better, to have more information, to gain more information. But if you're not the right person, then accept it and find the right support. And consult, I don't know, other organization, community organization, expert, whoever can help the best way possible. And make sure you are communicating well. This kind of the basic way to build a good connection. Then choice and collaboration. You're gonna focus once you think you're doing better with safety and trust. You show that you are a safe person, and you are given like proof that you can be trusted, that you are on their side. Then you can focus on choice and collaboration. That is a very important part of the work, because you will need to build a really keen and specific and precise understanding of their needs, because it's easy to make assumption about someone else's needs, but it's even hard for them to understand their own needs. Like, what would make that advocacy effort successful? Like, that's a question you can actually ask. You can sit with Natasha and ask, like, what would feel like that meeting went well? Like, how do you feel about the situation? What happened during that meeting and make you feel uncomfortable? Like, next time, is there something that I could have done differently? Like, taking the lead is also interrogating, because sometimes you want to be building you want to be building the approach together. Not everybody knows what they need. Like, some people are tired, they're confused, they are just overwhelmed. And when you ask them, like, what do you need of me? Like, they don't know. So asking the right question, being there, being present, is important. And giving options. Sometimes if you don't know, like, giving options. We like the metaphor of the hiking metaphor, we call it. And it's a good analogy just to understand how you can support someone that needs a path but don't know which one is the best. And as a supporter, you can actually offer choices. That will be very helpful. So the hiking analogy is, you're at the bottom of like a hiking a trail, for example. The caregiver is the hiker. You are the hike coordinator, and you need to get to the top. That's basically it. But there are multiple ways to go to the top, and we don't know which one is the best, but we will offer option. You can go. The only thing that we know is that we need to go to the lookout, the top of the mountain. So you give option to kind of guide them and show them that, you can walk straight. It's hard, but you can do it. There's a little path that takes a little more time, but it's easier to navigate, to follow. You can take this Uber that goes straight to the top. Like, this is different option. What feels right to you and what looks more like you. I think the goal is always to work with them and not for them. So once you sit down And you are a good coordinator, the good eye coordinator. You gave the options, and Natasha will tell you, okay, my goal is I want to be heard. You figure that out. Um, and she wants to be treated with dignity. Those are her goals. This is what would make the situation like addressing this will make the situation successful. You can get to a point where she will feel your support was valuable because she will feel heard and that she is respected and us getting her dignity back. So then you provide some pathways. You can join the meeting. You can draft an advocacy letter. You can prep for the individual meeting, and you can connect with an organization that will help with supporting your advocacy effort for a Black parent of a Black child in the education system. So you found solution with asking the right questions, with giving options. You find the best way to support Natasha, which might have been completely different for someone else. It's just now it's individual to her, and she feels supported, and you've done a good job. You're good support. Some example of clarifying questions, like we invite you to really try and craft your own, but some question that would help with if you're an advocate is, for example, one of these, like what would you hope be for the next meeting, for example, like what would it look like? What do you want to happen during the meeting? What would make you feel like the meeting was successful? What is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario? What would be the first emotion to come up for you after a successful meeting? What are your fears associated with the meeting? Or can you tell me about a time meeting went well? It is important. The mindset is important. Having a clear vision and understanding of what's going on, it's important. So asking the right questions is crucial. Other important elements to be a good advocate, not just a READI Plus advocate, but an advocate in general, is having a plan. Having a plan for what's next. It can be very helpful to have a follow-up schedule to make sure that this is when I should follow up. Is it urgent? Is it like priority? Is the timeline is tight? Do I have a long time? What are the important dates coming up? Like, and make sure you have a clear plan. Something that's very valuable and very important is the escalation plan. People don't think about that, but you need to know, like, what if those efforts are not successful? Who do I talk next? Who's the next person on the list? Like, you don't want to do something? Okay, I'm going to the director. I'm going to the superintendent. Like, whoever it is, you need to have a clear understanding of who you will have to talk next if things are not successful. It will save you a ton of time. You also need, it would be helpful for you to have pre-made templates of letter and emails, so you don't have to redo the work all the time. If you advocate on a regular basis for a lot of different people, then you don't want to reinvent the wheel, like we say. You want to make sure that you have access to those tools and it's easy to access. You would benefit from having a list of community partners that have very specific expertise and perspective. So you have to look for them when you encounter something. If you already have that list, a local organization of people, then you can just reach out and you can start to build actually that connection that will make the work better, more efficient, but also more connected. So you are more to support a family that's in need. And one of the last things that people don't think about, but it's very powerful and it's inspired by historically underserved community, is how stories are very powerful. Stories hold like this, a little bit of magic that will help you support what you're saying. So yeah, the story of the person you're trying to support, wherever they are, whatever they went through, but have story of success, of what you want to achieve with that family. If you are trying to help them access a program, then have the story of a family that accessed the program in a certain way, or with your help or the help of someone that you know, because being able to picture success help everybody involved. Because sometimes if there's barrier that people don't understand, or there's situation, like if you remove some layer of complexity by illustrating success, that is also building your own map towards success. And that will be very helpful and powerful. Those are extra elements that makes it easier, I think, to advocate it, to be an excellent advocate. Oh, no, I think you have a lot to help you deal with tough situations. You know a lot about advocating for other people because you have a better understanding of other people's situation, how to better relate, what to look for, what to do. Advocacy is a very specific, being an advocate is a very specific role. Advocacy is a very specific, not a hard, but almost something that you need to know the specific roles to do well. And one way to do the Ready Plus advocacy is everything that we taught you today. Is who you need to be, what part of you need to be, what you need to work on to show up as the person that is needed. What you can practice right now, if you're a supporter, regardless of who you are, is find one person or organization that can support you in this work, in the work that you want to do. Don't do it alone. Community connection is give you strength for sure. And identify one person who will hold you accountable. Remember that we talked about this. You need to find that person, that group, wherever that is, that will keep you aligned with your values. Because being connected to your values will help you build better, like the way you react, have more empathy for the way you react, but also will help you have more success with aligning with your value, which is a feeling that everybody should strive for, of course, but also will make you waste less space and time, and also mental space specifically, because you will spend less time judging yourself and more time celebrating yourself for being aligned with your own values. We hope you learned a lot through that training. This is one important one because this is one you can use right away. You can be someone who can help someone else. You can be a good supporter, especially that now that you have the tools, the basic tools, and how to practice to be the best advocate possible, thanks to the Ready Plus project. We hope you enjoyed. Now get to work.